Some stories don't begin with heroes or villains. They begin with a choice no one should ever have to make. In the silence between worlds, secrets are traded like weapons. And when the shadows come for what you love most, how far will you go, and how much of yourself will you lose before you realize the truth was never what it seemed? Port Arclight was alive with neon arteries. Sky lanes bled light above the towers, freighters crawling in and out like silver insects. Noise was constant. Vendors hawking alien fruit, shuttles venting thrusters, a dozen dialects colliding in the same breath. Yet inside one apartment on the 30th floor, Keir Ashland sat in a silence he had fought his entire life to earn. He watched his daughter Naya chase a paper kite across the living room, Thomas hammering at a hollow puzzle beside her. Celine leaned against the window, light pooling over her hair. For a man who had spent 20 years in covert ops, this quiet was wealth. He had walked away from war for this. A father's chance to repair what was broken in him. But peace, he knew, was fragile. It always was. The terminal chimed. Once, twice. A frequency no civilian channel ever used. Keir stiffened. Old reflexes. His hand brushed the scar under his collarbone, then reached for the console. The screen flickered. A ripple of static like water disturbed. Then the feed resolved. Celine's smile vanished. She whispered, "Keir." On the display, Celine again, but not the one beside him. A recording. She was restrained to a chair, wrists bound. Behind her, Thomas and Naya, frozen, fear carved into their faces. Keir's throat went dry. The Celine at the window gasped, spinning. Around. That's the feed cut to black, then a voice, synthetic, neither male nor female. Keir Ashland. 2 words, cold, certain, like the muzzle of a gun pressed to the back of his skull. He rose from the chair, heart slamming against his ribs. The living room dimmed, blinds sliding shut on their own. Someone was overriding his home systems. "What do you want?" His voice was flat, controlled, the tone he used when negotiations were measured in seconds of survival. The answer was a laugh, short, empty of humor. "You know what we want. We own the shadows in your city, the ones who smile at your children in the elevator. The ones who touch your food before it reaches your table. We own everything you depend on." Naya tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, what's happening?" Keir forced himself to kneel to meet her eyes. He managed a smile that didn't touch his own. "It's nothing, just work." But inside, the soldier returned. He catalogued exits, considered weapons in reach, mapped possibilities, and none of them led to freedom. The feed resumed. Thomas was crying now, shoulders shaking. Celine in the recording shouted his name, "Keir," before a hand shoved her head down, the voice again. "We don't need your life. We need your hands. One task. That's all." Keir clenched his fists. One task. It was never just one, but the part of him that had been a boy abandoned to a broken home, the part that swore no child of his would ever feel that emptiness, left him no room for refusal. Celine touched his arm, trembling. The real Celine. "Don't. Think this through." He looked at her, then at the children, then back to the screen. His past had taught him something simple. Hesitation kills faster than bullets. His answer came in 3 words. Short. Hard. "I'll do it." The feed cut. Lights returned to the room as if nothing had happened. Outside, Port Arclight still pulsed with life, oblivious. But Keir knew the silence had ended. His war had found him again. The room still smelled of fear. The echo of that synthetic voice clung to the walls like smoke. Celine stood rigid near the window, her hands trembling, while Thomas and Naya huddled close, staring at their father for answers. The console lit again. This time no video, just audio, a calm monotone. One mission, bring us what we ask, and they walk free. Keir's jaw locked. He had heard those bargains before, whispered across battlefields. They always began the same. They never ended the same. He spoke slowly, as if tasting poison. "If I do this, you let them go. Immediately." A pause, then a chuckle. Low, digital. "You are not in a position to negotiate," Naya whimpered. Thomas pressed his face into Celine's side. Keir's chest tightened. He had sworn never to let his children feel the abandonment he'd lived with, yet here it was, standing in his home, faceless and merciless. Celine's voice broke. "Keir, please, don't trust them." Her words sliced him deeper than any blade. But trust had nothing to do with it. This wasn't about belief. It was about survival, and survival meant buying time. Keir exhaled slowly. He forced steel into his voice. "Tell me the objective." The reply came sharp, like a collar tightening around his throat. "You'll receive details shortly. Fail us and you won't see them again. Agree, and maybe you'll still have a family." Static hissed, then silence. Keir stood motionless, fists clenched until his knuckles whitened. His mind raced. Routes, resources, every contact he'd burned since leaving the service. The soldier inside him had awakened fully now. But beside him stood his children, eyes wide, waiting for the father they knew. Not the weapon he used to. He knelt down, brushing Naya's hair back. "Listen to me. I'm going to fix this. You're safe. Do you hear me?" Tomas whispered. "Are you scared?" For a moment, the truth almost slipped out. Then Keir nodded once. "Yes, but being scared doesn't mean giving up." Behind him, Celine's eyes filled with tears. She saw it, the shift. The man who had come home from war to build a new life was already fading. In his place, the soldier was returning, and once that door opened, it never fully closed. The console blinked again. A string of coordinates, encrypted orders spilling. Across the hollow display, whoever they were, they worked with precision. No wasted words, no wasted threats. Keir leaned closer, his eyes scanning the data. Every part of him screamed to smash the terminal, to fight back now. But rage was a luxury. Rage wouldn't bring his family home. He tapped his wristband twice. A faint hum answered, barely audible. Hidden beneath the floor vents, a swarm of phantom motes stirred awake. Tiny, dust-sized drones designed for reconnaissance only the intelligence division had ever field-tested. He had kept one nest illegally after discharge, tucked away for a day he hoped would never come. That day had arrived. The motes slipped into the apartment's air currents, invisible, drifting toward the console. Their task was simple. Mirror every transmission, every encrypted handshake, every whisper of data. Celine's voice was sharp. Behind him. "Keir, what are you doing?" He turned, met her eyes. "Preparing. If they lie, I'll know." Her hands trembled. They already lied. That cut deep, because she was right. But Keir forced calm. "Then we gather proof. Proof. They can't bury." A fresh message burned onto the console. "Target Auric Tribunal. Retrieve asset, Veil Key. Deliver without delay." His stomach sank. The Auric Tribunal. He knew the name. Everyone in covert ops did. A fortress of propaganda built on misinformation and surveillance. Breaking into their vaults was suicide for anyone but him. That was why they wanted him. The synthetic voice returned, calm as ever. "You will comply. For their sake." Keir straightened, shoulders tight, gaze locked on the pulsing text. His mind divided itself the way it had on countless missions. One part mapped the route in, one part measured the traps, and a darker part, the part he hated, calculated acceptable sacrifices. He clenched his jaw. "I'll get it done," the voice hissed back. "Good. Deliver, and you'll see them again." Static swallowed the channel. Silence followed. Celine rushed forward, gripping his arm. "Keir, stop this. Once you start, they'll never let you go." Her plea shattered something inside him. He pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. I don't have the choice. Not this time. Naya's small hand slipped into his, fragile and warm. Daddy, will you come back? He forced a smile. It broke his heart to know it wasn't the truth. Always. Behind the facade, his resolve hardened. He wasn't just following orders. Every breath, every move, every stolen bite from the Phantom Motes was step one in turning their game against them. They thought they owned him. But Keir Ashland had just declared a private war. The tribunal loomed like a cathedral of glass and steel. Its towers stabbed the night sky, screens bleeding with curated headlines, market stable, accords unbroken, peace everlasting, lies dressed as truth. Keir knew better. He had studied their playbook, weaponized misinformation, engineered riots, entire elections rewritten, and inside, the Veil Key, a quantum cipher that cracked anything it touched. He crouched on a rooftop across the avenue, shadows pooling around his armor. Nothing heavy, just a dark jacket lined with tools from a past he'd sworn to bury. His breath misted in the cold air. Below, drones swept the perimeter, eyes glowing red in precise intervals. Simple in, simple out. He muttered it like a mantra, though he didn't believe a word. The phantom motes whispered across his retinal overlay. Every patrol path, every code handshake streamed to him in ghost-light threads. He waited, counted beats, then leapt. His boots hit a service balcony. He flattened against the wall. A drone slid past inches away, sensors scanning. He held still, silent, invisible. When it drifted on, he slipped inside. The corridor reeked of disinfectant, white walls, polished floors, cameras nested in every corner. Keir raised a palm. A shimmer unfolded around him, his spectral sheath imperfect but good enough against low-tier optics. He moved fast, every second stretched. Somewhere, Celine and the kids waited under a blade he couldn't see. 2 guards turned the corner. Their boots struck rhythm on the tile. Keir froze, sheath flickering faint. One of them frowned, eyes narrowing, then sneezed. They passed without a word. He exhaled, forcing tension down. Too close. The vault was 3 levels below. He descended maintenance shafts, slipped past security hubs, crawled through ducts that tasted of copper and oil. Memories stirred, missions in alien strongholds, dark ops where silence meant survival. He hated how natural it felt to be back, in this skin. At last, the vault, a door of obsidian alloy, veins of gold circuitry pulsing like a heartbeat. The phantom motes swarmed its locks, weaving digital fingerprints. His overlay flared, access granted. Inside, cold light spread over, rows of data pillars. At the center, suspended in a cradle of magnetic fields, floated the Veil Key, a prism of shifting light, its surfaces refracting into infinite patterns. Keir approached, pulse hammering. This was the object they wanted. The reason his family was. Caged, he reached out, fingers brushing the prism. It was warm, alive as if aware of him. He slipped it into a containment case at his belt, and then, stop, a voice behind him, human, sharp. Keir spun, pistol drawn in one motion. A woman stood in the doorway, uniform crisp, insignia gleaming. Vex Arum, one of the tribunal's magistrates. Her eyes narrowed. Do you know what you've stolen? Keir's tone was cold steel. Not my concern. You're wrong. With that key, they'll burn whole systems. He hesitated, just a breath. Her words hit too close. But the thought of Tomas, Naya, Celine chained in the dark snapped him back. Move aside. She studied him, then stepped back with a thin smile. Then may your family forgive what comes. Keir didn't answer. He pushed past her, sheath flickering as alarms began to wail. Red lights strobed across the vault. He ran. Corridors screamed with klaxons. Drones swarmed like hornets, but the phantom motes jammed their optics just long enough. Bullets of light. Traced his heels as he crashed through a window, skystep harness firing, hurling him across the street into the night. Glass rained down. His boots slammed the opposite rooftop. He rolled, chest heaving, case clutched tight against him. Mission complete. But the taste in his mouth was ash. Keir dropped the case onto the table. The veil key shimmered inside, its surfaces bending the light into shifting shards. His chest still burned from the sprint, glass cuts stinging along his arms. He activated the console. "It's done. Release them." Static. Then the same synthetic voice, calm as if nothing mattered. "We have received the asset. Efficient." Keir leaned forward, jaw tight. "I said release them now." For a moment only silence. Then the voice returned, colder than before. "There. It's another task." The words froze him. His pulse spiked. That wasn't the deal. A low laugh crackled through the speakers. There was no deal, only survival. If you wish to keep them breathing, you will proceed. Zelene's face flashed on the screen again, this time live. Bruised, terrified, Thomas and Naya clung to her arms, eyes red from crying. The voice continued, each syllable cutting like wire. "Do not mistake completion for freedom. You belong to us until we say otherwise." Keir's hands curled into fists, knuckles white. He wanted to smash the console, tear down the walls, burn the whole city until his family stood safe again. But the soldier in him forced restraint. Rage without patience was suicide. He inhaled, steady, exhaled, controlled. Eyes narrowed with a fire he hadn't felt in years. Inside, the truth crystallized. They would never let go, not after one mission, not after 10. He whispered to himself, almost too quiet to hear. "Then I'll find another way." The feed cut. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the phantom motes, recording everything. The war had only just begun. Varys 4 was a world built on fire and iron. The Carthene ring encircled its equator like a chain of scars, each segment a shipyard, a refinery or a foundry, belching smoke into the ochre skies. Cargo haulers crawled along the orbital lanes, dragging weapons the size of towers. Every breath tasted of metal dust and reactor fumes. Keir Ashland stood on a gantry overlooking the industrial sprawl, hood drawn low. He had seen war zones less armed than this one factory world. Aegis Foundry, the largest weapons complex in 3 sectors, rose before him, walls armored thicker than dreadnought hulls. His wrist console buzzed. The synthetic voice slithered through again. "Your next objective is simple. Disable their production line. The foundry will not rise again." Keir's jaw flexed. "You want me to cripple a weapons plant? Why?" The reply came like a blade drawn slow. "You do not ask why. You deliver. Or they die." A static flicker. Then the screen burned with an image of Selene. Fresh bruises across her cheek. Thomas, clinging to her sleeve. Naya's eyes red from tears. The voice cut back in, flat. "One mission was never enough. Did you truly believe we would let you walk away?" Keir closed his eyes. Rage surged, cold and sharp. He wanted to scream, to put a bullet through the comm unit. Instead, he forced the fire into stillness. Soldiers survive by discipline. Fathers survive by hope. He looked out at the sprawling foundry, flames painting the night sky. His reflection stared back from the visor's faint glow. Older, harder, something darker pulling him in. "You're making me burn the galaxy, one piece at a time," he muttered. The voice answered with silence. They didn't care. Keir inhaled the bitter air. Somewhere in that factory, he would have to crawl back into the skin he thought he had shed. Covert, relentless, merciless. Each mission peeled him further away from the man Selene had begged him to stay. He whispered under his breath, words meant only for himself. "Hold on, Selene. Hold on, kids. I'll end this before it ends us." A freight skimmer thundered past, shaking the gantry beneath his boots. Sparks from its engines lit the haze. Keir pulled the spectral sheath tight around his frame, his body blurring at the edges until he was nothing but a ripple in the night. The phantom motes stirred, whispering in his ears like restless ghosts. They mapped guard patterns, tracked. Sensor sweeps fed him windows of opportunity measured in seconds. Keir dropped from the gantry into the shadows below, landing light. His chest ached, not from the fall, but from the weight of choice pressing down harder with each mission. Behind him, the voice lingered like a curse. "Be efficient, Ashland. If you are clever, do not try to be cleverer than us." He ignored. It focused on the gates of Aegis Foundry, towering like the jaws of a beast. The soldier in him was alive again, muscles remembering, instincts sharpening. The father in him whispered fear with every step, and Keir knew each mission was pulling those two halves further apart. His foundry was alive with noise, conveyors shrieking, plasma welders roaring, armored loaders stomping under the weight of missile casings. To anyone else, it was chaos. To Keir Ashland, it was cover. He slipped between shadows, the spectral sheath bending light around him. Workers passed within arm's reach, unaware a ghost moved among them. His eyes traced the production floor, hundreds of weapons rolling. Off the line, each one destined for a war someone else would fight. The comm in his ear crackled. The voice again. "Proceed, disable their reactor feed, fast." Keir didn't answer. He was already moving, but not for their reactor. His fingers tapped the control on his wristband. The phantom motes stirred, scattering like dust along the catwalk rails, vanishing into vents and cable runs. Their purpose tonight wasn't surveillance. Tonight, they were thieves. Each mote latched onto a data pulse, cloning fragments of transmission, routing codes, encryption chains, metadata trails, individually worthless. Together, a map that could lead him to the hand holding his family's leash. Celine's face burned in his memory. Thomas crying, Naya clinging to her arm. The image hardened him, the voice hissed in his ear. "Status report," he whispered, flat, setting charges. A lie, clean, practiced. He moved deeper, past storage racks stacked with railgun components. Every camera sweep was logged by the motes, their stolen data feeding back into his overlay. Green lines traced across his vision, weaving together a web of connections, all pointing outward. And there it was, a signature buried inside the command streams, Meridian Shroud. The name dropped into his gut like lead, a ghost story among operatives. A syndicate said to own the black markets of half the Orion arm, with enough reach to topple governments without firing a shot. If they were the ones pulling his strings, then this wasn't just about his family. It was about control of entire systems. Keir planted a pulse beacon on the reactor's coolant pipe, enough to simulate sabotage. When it triggered, alarms would scream and the foundry would stall just long enough to convince his captors he had obeyed. "Charges in place," he said. The voice replied, almost satisfied. "Good. Extraction window in 3 minutes." Keir cut the channel. His pulse was steady, his jaw set. The soldier in him was back in full, but this time with a secret weapon, knowledge. He whispered to himself, voice low and sharp. "You think I'm yours, but I'm already tracing you." And above him, unseen, the phantom motes kept stealing, line by line, truth by truth. The alarms wailed, workers scattered, security drones fanned out in tight formations. To them, Keir Ashland was invisible, a ripple of distortion moving through their chaos. But invisibility had limits, and his luck was burning fast. He sprinted down a maintenance corridor, spectral sheath flickering with every hard step. His overlay glowed with extraction vectors, almost out. Then the world went silent. Not muted, not quiet. Dead. The shriek of alarms vanished, mid-note. His boots struck metal, no echo, even his own breath gone. He slapped his chest instinctively, ears straining. Nothing, a pressure pressed in, thick as water. His overlay scrambled, lines breaking apart into static. Words scrawled across the HUD. Hush field detected. Keir froze. He knew what this was. A field designed to nullify sound, disrupt senses, isolate targets until they drowned in silence. A trap built for operatives like him. The corridor lights dimmed, red strobes slowing into long, suffocating intervals. His throat tightened. The air itself felt heavy, like it wanted to crush him. He moved forward, steps quick, but the silence made every stride unbearable. Without sound, the world lost depth. No rhythm, no pulse, just emptiness. And in that emptiness, his past clawed back. He was 6 again, standing in a doorway lit by firelight, his mother's voice screaming his name, then cut short. Silence. His father's face, gone in a blur of smoke. The door closing, the sound of abandonment. And then, nothing. Keir staggered, gripping the wall, nails biting into steel. His chest heaved, but there was no breath to hear. The hush field turned, his fear into a tomb, a flicker of movement, drones sliding along the ceiling, eyes scanning. Their weapons tracked, but even their hum was stolen. He raised his pistol, fired. Muzzle flared, but no sound, just light, swallowed instantly. One drone fell, sparking, but the silence devoured even that. Panic threatened to crack him. Panic. The old enemy! He clenched his teeth, sweat cutting cold lines down his face. Then a voice rose, not external, but within. Celine's voice. Not captured, not broken, just memory. Don't give them what they took from you. He steadied. His fear had always been losing family to silence, to absence. But now his family was why he couldn't stop. He thumbed his harness. The skystep harness hissed, microthrusters warming. He calculated the arc, up through the ventilation shaft, past the drones, straight out of the field. The motes whispered faint signals, half-blind, but enough. He launched. The world blurred, silent sparks trailing as the harness catapulted him upward. Drones fired, beams slicing inches from his skin. One clipped his arm, heat burning flesh. He bit down hard, no scream to give. The shaft closed around him. Then, suddenly, sound slammed back, alarms screaming, harness roaring. His own grunt tearing free, raw and alive. He crashed through a vent grill, tumbling onto a higher catwalk. His ears rang with the violence of noise returning. He lay there, chest heaving, sweat pooling at his jaw. His overlay blinked stable again. The motes confirmed, Hushfield behind him. Keir pushed himself up, blood dripping from his arm. He looked back at the corridor, that silent coffin, and whispered, voice shaking but firm, "You won't take them from me." Not the way they were taken before. His eyes hardened. The boy who had been abandoned was gone. The man who had something to protect was still standing, and if silence couldn't bury him, nothing would. Keir's arm burned where the beam had scorched him. He bounded quick, jaw clenched, eyes scanning for an exit. Noise had returned, but inside his chest the silence of the hush field still echoed. The console at his wrist blinked red. Incoming feed. He almost shut it down, but froze when the screen lit Thomas. The boy was tied to a chair in a dim bunker, a single lamp swinging above. His hands bound tight with cord, his face streaked with dirt. A mound of crates sat behind him. Keir's eyes locked on the stenciled markings, reactive munitions. Enough to erase the entire block. The synthetic voice purred into his ear. Clever. Trick with the motes, you thought we wouldn't notice. Keir's stomach tightened. They had seen through him. Don't touch him. His voice came low, deadly. A laugh followed, hollow, electric. Do as you're told, Ashland. Nothing more, nothing less. Every bite you steal, every second you hesitate, your son pays the price. The camera zoomed. Thomas flinched, eyes wide with terror, but he tried to sit tall, tried to be braver than his years. Keir's throat locked. Leave him out of this. Your fight's with me, the reply cut sharp. No, your weakness is with them, and that is why you obey. The feed ended, screen black. Keir stared at his reflection in the dark glass, breathing hard. His hands shook, but not from fear, from fury contained. He whispered the words iron. You think you own me. You think you can break me through them, but you just gave me another reason to take you apart." His fist slammed the rail. The metal rang out, sharp, alive. Below, the foundry roared on, oblivious. Above, the moat still drifted, gathering truths. Line by line, Keir straightened, blood still dripping from his arm, resolve harder than steel. If they wanted obedience, they would get it. If they wanted submission, they would get the opposite. The safe house smelled of rust and coolant. Keir sat alone at a cracked console, arm still bleeding through the bandage. Around him, the phantom motes drifted back into their dock, glowing faint like fireflies. Each mote spilled fragments of stolen data onto the screen, routing codes, command echoes, encrypted signals. He studied them in silence. Patterns began to form, threads linking the foundry's orders back into the dark. And behind the dark, a name already carved into whispers. Meridian Shroud. His reflection stared back at him in the glass, eyes sunken, jaw hard. He looked less like the father who tucked children into bed, more like the weapon he once was. The console pulsed. Another message, cold, commanding, "Prepare for your next mission." Keir leaned forward, voice a razor. "You'll keep asking, you'll never stop." He exhaled, slow, steady. His hands stopped shaking. "Then I won't stop either." He triggered the motes, setting them into permanent recording mode. Every channel, every whisper, every lie, they would capture it all. The war wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proof. Proof sharp enough to cut the hand that held his family hostage. Keir closed the console. The shadows pressed close, but this time he welcomed them. Let them believe he was chained. He was already sharpening the key. Ophera 9 was a wound in the galaxy. The glimmer belt around it shimmered with fractured light, but up close the glow came from shattered asteroids, burning refineries, and ships that never left. The planet below wore a permanent haze, the atmosphere thick with smoke from bio-furnaces. Keir Ashland stepped off the transport onto a docking spine that groaned with rust. His boots sank into grime. Everywhere he looked, cargo crates, armed patrols, scarred traders with eyes that lingered too long. This wasn't a market. It was a hunting ground. The comm in his ear clicked, the voice, cold, synthetic. "You're next. Assignment: infiltrate the Chimera Exchange, secure their ledgers, do not hesitate." Keir stared across the skyline. Towers of alloy and bone rose from the city's core, stitched together from wrecked ships and harvested biotech. At their heart, the exchange. A place whispered about in intel briefings, dismissed as rumor. A market where hybrid children, half human, half alien, were tagged and traded like livestock. He swallowed hard. He had seen wars fought over land, over resources, even over faith. But this was different. This was life itself, stripped and bartered. His reflection in a rain-slick bulkhead caught his eye. Hollow cheeks, eyes shadowed. He hardly recognized the man staring back. The voice pressed again. "Do not mistake this for mercy. Fail, and they die." He clenched his fists. "You'll never stop, will you?" Static. Then silence. Keir pulled his hood tighter and slipped into the crowd. Dock workers shouted in alien dialects, their hands rough with scars. Enforcers in spiked armor pushed carts that dripped fluid from sealed tanks. The smell was rot and ozone, thick enough to choke. The phantom motes stirred in his pocket, humming faint. They were restless, as if the very air here buzzed with secrets begging to be stolen. He moved through alleys lit by broken neon. A vendor hawked gene-spliced pets that hissed in glass jars. Another sold nutrient packs, stamped with the insignia of the Terran Varia Accord, proof the exchange had reach even into legitimate space. But it was the cages that stopped him. Cold, children, small, silent, their eyes too large for their faces, some with ridges along their skulls, some with silver veins under translucent skin. They didn't cry. They didn't even look afraid. Just empty. Keir forced himself to move. His chest felt carved hollow. He whispered, voice rough. "Celine, Thomas, Naya, I swear you'll never see me break. Not here." Yet inside, something cracked. He had always fought wars against soldiers, machines, empires. But this was a war against what it meant to be human. He reached the outer gate of the exchange. Guards in chitin-plated suits scanned the crowd, weapons gleaming, a banner unfurled above them, stitched from fabric that shimmered like skin. The words burned in harsh letters. Chimera Exchange. Keir's hand drifted to his wrist console. He whispered into the silence, every word a vow. "I'll get your ledger, but I'll also burn your house down." The gates opened with a hiss. Heat, stench, and the sound of chains poured out. Keir stepped inside, carrying not just the mission, but the weight of a father staring into the darkest mirror of what the galaxy had become. The exchange stank of antiseptic and decay. Keir moved. Through corridors lit by sickly blue lamps, walls lined with cryopods that hissed softly. Behind every frost-stained window, faces, infants, teenagers, half human, half something else, none of them free. His chest tightened, but he kept moving. The phantom motes scattered ahead, whispering digital trails across his visor. They pointed him to a chamber deeper in, guarded by steel doors veined with organic wiring. A living lock. Keir pressed his palm to the panel. The sheath shimmered, fooling the scanner with a forged signature. The door split open, releasing a gust of air that tasted like copper. Inside stood a single pillar of glass, cables dripping from its crown. In its heart pulsed a sphere of light, data condensed into living code. The exchange's treasure, ledger of flesh. He approached, boots echoing against the floor. His reflection bent in the glass, fractured into a dozen versions of himself. Soldier, father, pawn, rebel. "All right," he muttered, "show me your sins." The motes swarmed the pillar, needles of light stabbing into its streams. Data spilled. Across his HUD, shipments logged in cold numbers, ages of children, genetic markers catalogued like barcodes. He scrolled faster. His stomach churned. Then he saw it. Payment chains. Transfers leaping across shadow accounts, flowing like blood vessels back to a heart he already knew, Meridian Shroud. The name glared in red across his visor. Not rumor, not ghost. Fact. Keir clenched his jaw. His hands trembled. This was the proof. He needed evidence sharp enough to cut down the ones who thought they owned him. The comm crackled. That synthetic voice again. "Retrieve the ledger. Deliver intact. Do not tamper," he whispered back. Calm. Deadly. "You really should stop telling me what not to do." The motes copied everything, terabytes compressed into slivers of code. But they also left hooks, silent back doors threading into the Shroud's accounts. A parasite disguised as obedience. Keir pulled the core free. The glass screamed as he ripped the cables loose, alarms waking, red lights strobed, sirens howling. He shoved the core into his pack and turned toward the exit. This time he wasn't just running for his family. This time he carried the truth. The alarms pounded through the exchange. Red light strobed along the corridors as Keir pushed deeper, clutching the pack that held the ledger. Every instinct screamed to get out, but something else tugged at him, a sound. Not loud, just faint scratching, carried through the metal floor. He paused, listened. The phantom motes spread wide, mapping corridors. One conduit led to a cargo. Vault sealed with frost. The signal came from there. Keir forced the hatch open. A wave of icy air burst out, burning his lungs. The chamber beyond was lined with containers, rows of them stacked to the ceiling, each one glowing blue with cryo-seals. He stepped inside, his breath clouded. Frost crackled under his boots. He wiped a window with his glove. Inside, a child. Floated in gel, tiny chest unmoving. Another container, 2 more, 12, 50. His stomach turned to stone. God! His voice broke. They're selling children. He moved faster, checking container after container. Most were still, lifeless. But then, one. A weak flicker. A small hand twitched against the glass. Keir slammed the override. The cryo hissed, seals unlocking with a metallic groan. The lid lifted, spilling vapor. A girl, no older than Naya, slumped forward into his arms. Her skin glowed faintly with silver veins, her hair a pale shimmer not of earth. Her body shook violently, lungs gasping against the sudden air. Easy, easy, I've got you. Keir wrapped his jacket around her, pressing her against his chest. Her heartbeat fluttered like a trapped bird, her eyes cracked open, grey, luminous, not quite human. Lips trembling, she whispered, "Choir." Keir froze. "What did you say?" Her voice rasped again, broken, half delirious. "Mnemonic choir." Then she collapsed, unconscious. Keir's pulse thundered. He had heard fragments of that name in black files. Half-erased intel about a cult that hacked memory, rewrote loyalty, hollowed people into obedient shells. If the exchange was tied to them, then the web was even darker than he imagined. The com flared in his ear, the synthetic voice sharp. "You are straying from the path. Leave the cargo. Deliver the ledger." Keir glared into the empty air. "You knew, didn't you? What they're doing here?" No answer, just silence heavy enough to confirm it all. He pulled the girl tighter. "Then this one lives. You don't get to own her." The moat swirled, feeding him exit routes as armed guards closed in. He sprinted through frost clouds, the girl's shallow breaths warm against his chest. Bullets of plasma sliced past, carving molten scars into the walls. He ducked behind a crate, returned fire. 2 guards fell, the rest scattering. The girl stirred faintly, lips moving without sound. Keir looked down, and for a heartbeat he saw Naya's face in hers. Fragile, afraid, in need of a father who wouldn't fail. He whispered, "Steady. I've got you. You're safe now." But deep inside, the words burned. He wasn't sure he could keep that promise. Not yet. The moats pulsed with warning, reinforcements converging. Keir shifted the girl higher in his arms, heart pounding. He wasn't just a soldier now, he wasn't just a father. He was carrying proof and life that the galaxy wanted buried. He pushed into the corridors, alarms screaming louder. Every step was a vow. He would deliver the ledger. He would expose the exchange, and he would protect this child. Because if the galaxy was willing to trade children like commodities, then Keir Ashland would burn down every market that dared to. Call it business. Keir pressed forward through collapsing corridors, the rescued girl limp against his shoulder. Then the walls around him lit up. Screens unfolded from the steel, every surface flickering alive. A face appeared, sharp features, hair slicked with oil, eyes gleaming like knives. Cass Var, the broker of flesh, Keir Ashland. His voice was silk over steel. The soldier who thinks he's a savior. Keir's grip tightened on the girl. "You traffic children. I'll tear your exchange apart." Cass smiled, then lowered a device into view. A crown of wires pulsed with light. "Neuroveil. Words don't matter," Cass whispered. "Only guilt does." The crown lit and the screens bled into Keir's mind. Voices. Celine screamed, Thomas crying, Naya whispering, "Daddy, why did you let them hurt us?" Keir staggered, slamming against the wall, his vision fractured, hallways, bending, faces multiplying, every memory twisted, injected with poison. "You are the reason they suffer," Cass's voice echoed. "Every mission, every delay, every lie, you carve the wounds yourself." Keir's knees buckled. The girl in his arms felt heavier, almost slipping. His throat clenched as images seared into him. Celine bleeding, children shackled, his own hands turning the keys. "No." His voice cracked. The neuroveil pressed harder, shoving false memories into place. His pulse spiked. His mind screamed. Then training cut through. Breath. In. Hold. Out. Rhythm drilled into him years ago, a lifeline in chaos. He focused. centered. Each inhale burned, each exhale steadied. "No," he growled louder. "You don't own my guilt." The motes shimmered, swarming the panels, scrambling the signal. Sparks cascaded as Cass's image warped, distorting into static. Cass hissed through the noise. "You can't fight what you are, Ashland. A weapon, a curse." Keir forced himself upright, eyes like steel. "Maybe, but I choose who I aim at." The screens shattered back to black. Silence returned, broken only by the girl's shallow breaths. Keir adjusted his hold on her, jaw set. His mind still throbbed, but the core of him stood unbroken. They wanted him to drown in guilt. Instead, they had only hardened his resolve. The night air reeked of ash. Keir staggered across the landing pad, the rescued girl wrapped in his jacket. Behind him, the exchange still burned, alarms wailing into the smog. The phantom motes swirled back into their dock, data streams glowing on his visor. Ledger secured. Mission done. He lowered the girl onto a crate, checked her pulse. Weak, but steady. For the first time since landing, a breath of relief slipped from his chest. Then the console lit. Cold text scrolled across. Mission complete. Pause. Next objective. Ready. Keir's fists tightened. "No, you said 3. The reply cut sharp. Merciless. Mission 4. Then release. His jaw locked, eyes burning. They had no intention of ending this. Each promise was a leash. Each mission another chain. He looked at the unconscious child, then at the horizon smeared with fire. "All right," he whispered, voice flat, deadly. "You want me to keep going? I'll keep going. But on my terms." The message faded, leaving only the smoke and the sound of his own vow echoing in the dark. The war wasn't closing. It was widening. Nick's passage hung in the dark like a silver throat, a lattice of rings and antennae, miles wide, tuned to swallow whispers from 100 systems and send them back as thunder. Transit bays blinked with docking lights. Along the outer hull, great dishes turned in slow, patient arcs, listening to memories as if they were music. Keir Ashland watched the station grow in the viewport of a cargo shuttle. The glass showed him 3 reflections at once: the soldier, the father, and a third he didn't have a name for yet, someone who hunted songs. The shuttle kissed a service lock. Pressure equalized. Doors parted with a sigh. Nick's passage was not loud. It was precise. Floors hummed at a frequency you felt in bone. Air smelled of ionized metal and antiseptic, the kind used in places that claim to heal but never quite do. Along the concourse, pilgrims in grey robes drifted toward a chapel that wasn't a chapel, an auditorium with black acoustic walls and a stage wired like a nervous system. Mnemonic choir. They didn't wear uniforms. They wore smiles. Technicians with clean hands, ushers with soft voices, a medic who never blinked. Above, a banner of thin light flowed with shifting phrases: "Recall to be free. Remember to obey." Keir lowered his hood and moved with the workers, a tool case in one hand, his body softened behind a spectral sheath tuned low. He was not a shadow here. Shadows are obvious. He was routine, forgettable. A man no one would stop. The choir had a legend. They didn't take your memories. They rearranged them, the way a song rearranges a room. Verse by verse, pulse by pulse, they attached new meanings to old moments. A riot could feel like relief, a tyrant could taste like safety, and one sentence, placed just right, could become a trigger you'd mistake for your own thought. Keir passed a viewing panel and saw the station's heart. A spindle of glass housed the broadcast spine, cables descending like roots through the decks. Around it, a choir loft without singers, racks of neuro-crown rigs waiting for heads, throne-like chairs with delicate clamps where temples would rest. At the far end, a control rostrum shaped for a conductor. He'd seen the name in redacted files. He'd seen it in a child's cracked whisper on Ophira 9, Nairo Vale. The choir's maestro. A soft chime touched his ear. Not a voice this time. A tone. Harmless if you didn't know the code hidden in its slope. Keir's jaw tightened. He recognized the cadence. On the outer rings they were running a harmonic wash, a low-dose neuroveil to lull visitors into compliance. Nothing overt, just a tilt of the mind toward yes. He exhaled slow, let it pass through him, counted breaths, held the center. The training that had carried him out of 100 traps carried him through this one too. Keep walking, he told himself. The words came out level. See the structure, find the seams. He saw them, vents that fed the upper baffles, maintenance shafts threaded behind the audience wall, a service lift descending into the signal mixers, and above the rostrum a rack of brinkcaster nodes, Ansible relays that would mirror whatever the choir sang into far systems faster than anyone could cut the line. He wasn't here to smash glass, he was here to lay hands on the core. To learn the phrasing of their weapon and write a counterpoint. A woman in grey fell into step beside him, polite smile, hands folded. You're new. Rotational tech, he said, voice ordinary, accent borrowed from the dock. Her gaze slid over his. Tool case. We value service. Service keeps the sound clean. She seemed satisfied, or programmed to be. May your best memory return. It was the kind of blessing that sounded kind until you thought about it. He drifted past a low arch into a prep bay. Techs calibrated neuro crowns, green lights ticking, along the rims, like halos designed by a knife manufacturer. On a side screen, a promo played with no audio, families clapping in a square as a speech crescendoed. Men dropping their weapons, tears on their faces, a city kneeling in perfect synchrony. The cut ended on a silhouette at a podium. No face, just posture, just power. Keir's thumb brushed the seam of his case. Inside, phantom motes nested like patient sparks. They had eaten 3 networks already. Auric Tribunal, Aegis Foundry, Chimera Exchange, and brought him everything those monsters thought they could hide. Now they would learn a song. He paused at a glass wall. The auditorium beyond was half full. Visitors settled into chairs with the calm of people who believed calm was the point. Speakers on the walls didn't look like speakers at all. They looked like sculpture, beautiful, sharp. If you didn't know any better, you'd want one at home. He thought of Celine, of Thomas and Naya. He let the ache land, and then he did something new with it. He shaped it. Pain as attention. Love as aim. He had learned what obedience cost. He had learned what absence sounded like. He would not hear either again without answering. Target the spine, he murmured, as if reminding himself where to put a wrench. Map the rostrum, chart the exits. Adapt the plan. His voice stayed steady. It had to. 2 ushers crossed. The aisle, escorting a group toward the front. Keir lifted a datapad and scribbled nonsense numbers with his eyes on the catwalk above the stage. His path, not tonight, but soon. The concourse lights dimmed a fraction. A ripple ran through the air, too quick for anyone to notice unless they were waiting for it. Keir felt the first bar of a composition the choir played before every service, a subtle confidence primer. He let it move around him like wind. On his overlay, ghost lines drew themselves, vents, ladders, ducts, fiber trunks, an anatomy sketch of a predator's mouth. He did not feel small. For the first time since port, Arclight, since that first call that split his life in 2, he felt aligned. He wasn't just surviving the next order. He was taking position for the strike that would make orders meaningless. Keir Ashland looked into the black heart of Nick's passage and smiled without showing his teeth. Sing, he thought. I'm listening. The chamber darkened without warning. Screens along the wall flickered one by one until only a single feed remained. Keir froze. Celine. She was bound to a chair, wrists locked in steel cuffs, her eyes wide, terrified, but worse than fear was the crown clamped to her temples. Wires curled into her scalp, lights pulsing like veins of fire. Neurocrown. Keir's chest tightened, breath stuck in his throat. A voice slid through the speakers, smooth, mocking. Nairo Vale. The most effective weapon, Ashland, is never forged. It is spoken by the one you cannot bear to silence. Celine's lips trembled. Then her voice came, broken at first, then steady. Keir, come home. The words cut deeper than blades. He stepped forward, hand out as if he could touch her. Through glass. Celine, it's not you, fight it. But she kept speaking. Each phrase sharper, more rhythmic, until it carried the cadence of command. You failed them. You left them. Your children suffer because of you. Keir stumbled back. The chamber swayed. Images flared across the screens. Thomas in chains. Naya crying. Celine's face fading into shadow. The neurocrown bent her voice into a key, each word locking deeper into his chest. He clenched his fists, nails drawing blood. This isn't real. This isn't her. But the ache was real. The guilt was real. Stop this. His voice cracked. Use me, not her. Nairo's reply was silk and iron. You are easiest broken by the one you swore to protect. Every soldier has a weakness. Ours is memory. Yours is love. Celine's voice rose again, louder now, echoing like a hymn. You are the reason. You are the wound. You are the end. Keir dropped to one knee, head bowed, vision fracturing. The neurocrown pulsed brighter. He forced a breath. In, hold, out, training, discipline, one anchor at a time, he whispered to himself. This isn't her choice. This is their chain. Another breath, deeper, another, stronger. He lifted his head, eyes locked on Celine. Celine, I hear you. Not them. I hear the woman who raised our children, who held me through every nightmare. That's the voice I follow. For a heartbeat, her face flickered, pain breaking through the mask. Tears welled before the crown forced her expression back into ice. The feed cut to black. Keir staggered to his feet, shaking but unbroken. Sweat streaked his temples, but his voice came low and steady. You tried to make her your weapon. All you did was remind me why I fight. Keir stood trembling in the dark, Celine's last forced words still echoing in his skull. His pulse hammered. His body shook like a marionette cut from its strings. To the choir, it looked like collapse. To him, it was performance. He dropped to his knees, shoulders slumping. Sweat streaked his face. His voice broke into the open channel. I can't fight her. From the shadows above, the choir technicians leaned in. Some smiled, some only nodded, like surgeons watching anesthesia take hold. The conductor's voice poured across the chamber, low and proud. Good, Ashland. Accept what you are. A vessel. An echo we can tune. Keir lowered his gaze, hiding. The faint shimmer building around his frame. The spectral sheath pulsed once, then dimmed to near invisibility. Not absence, distortion. The perfect mask for a man feigning defeat. Inside his head, his discipline counted beats. 3 for breath, 2 for focus, 1 for action. The choir's hymn began, a vibration in the air, subharmonics pressing against bone. Screens flared with spirals of color designed to burrow into memory. If he stared too long, he'd forget his own name. He let his body twitch, let his eyes glaze. But under the haze, his hand slid across the floor, fingers brushing the ridge of a data port built. Into the chamber wall, the phantom motes stirred from his pack, spilling out like sparks from an unseen fire. They scattered across the floor, up the walls, into the conduits feeding the broadcast spine. Each mote whispered code, burrowed, cloned and transmitted. Data surged into his visor. Green chains, gold links, red alerts. 3 missions condensed into one truth. Auric Tribunal propaganda streams, Aegis Foundry weapons manifests, Chimera exchange flesh ledgers, all threaded into the same artery. Now he was ready to lance it. He whispered through clenched teeth, almost inaudible. Route. To Accord channel. Encrypt with Veilkey protocol. Go. The motes obeyed. A stream of light poured outward, unseen, silent, carried on stolen bands into the secure channels of the Terran Vari Accord. The galaxy's lawful alliance would see the rot for the first time. Above, Nairo Vale's voice swelled, echoing through the chamber. Rise, Keir Ashland. Rise as a witness to your own rebirth. Keir twitched, raised his head just enough to sell the illusion. His eyes unfocused, his lips moved with a fractured murmur. Yes, I hear. The choir roared in approval, voices layering into a wall of sound, but beneath the act, his HUD blinked confirmation. Data uplink active. 67%, 78%, 91%, one mote burned out, fried by the spine's firewall. Another followed. The choir's system had teeth. He clenched his jaw, sweat dripping, and willed the rest forward. 5%, 98%, complete. The spine pulsed with a shockwave of static. Lights flickered. Technicians glanced around, confused. For a split second, the broadcast carried not the choir's hymn, but shards of evidence. Images of cages on Ophera 9, manifests of weapons on Varys 4, tribunal propaganda cycles written line by line, truth spliced into their song. Gasps rippled across the chamber floor. Not all the faithful understood, but a seed was planted. Keir staggered to his feet, still acting broken. His voice cracked. More! Give me more! The conductor, blind to the theft, spread his arms. Yes, soldier, let us pour the anthem. Into you. Keir smiled without showing his teeth, the smile of a man who had just slipped a knife into the ribs of an empire. The uplink cut with a final flash. Data sent. Locks sealed. Evidence secured beyond their reach. He whispered, only for himself. You can't cage every echo. Some escape. The sheath flared brighter now, wrapping him completely. He moved toward the spine, steps silent, body blurred to a shimmer. One tech frowned, eyes narrowing. Wait. Keir struck, quick, surgical, a strike to the console, a boot through the power feed. Sparks exploded, alarms screamed. The hymn faltered, spirals breaking apart on the screens. For the first time since he arrived, the choir sounded uncertain. Keir turned, cloak rippling, his eyes steel. I'm not your echo, he said. I'm the dissonance. And with the spine sparking behind him, and the accord now holding the truth, he disappeared into the chaos he had sown. The spine still smoked from Keir's strike. Sparks cascaded across the floor, alarms blaring in broken rhythm. The motes swirled around him, dumping the last of their stolen fragments onto his visor. Lines of code aligned. Numbers became trails. Trails became arteries. 3 missions, 3 pieces. Now a body Auric Tribunal propaganda streams. Aegis Foundry's weapon manifests. Chimera exchanges flesh ledger, and the choir's broadcast lattice, all of it folding. Inward, converging on a single point. Keir's breath caught. It's all one system. The visor sharpened, the arteries lit with a crimson glow. At their center, a name surfaced like a wound reopening. Melik Stran, not rumor, not shadow. The architect. The man who wove politics, war machines, flesh markets, and songs of obedience into one net. The chamber trembled, as if his recognition alone summoned him. Then the screens lit, not static, not sermons. A face, tall forehead, sharp cheekbones, eyes, like dark glass, calm, patient, deadly, Stran. His voice rolled across the broken chamber, deeper than any choir hymn. You've been busy, Ashland, tearing threads you barely understand. Keir stood straighter, shoulders squaring. Busy surviving, busy collecting the proof you never thought anyone could trace. Stran almost smiled. Proof? Evidence is just a story told by the loudest voice, and we own every voice. Keir stepped forward, boots crunching glass. Not anymore. I pushed it out. Tribunal, Foundry, Exchange, Choir, they're linked. And the Accord has it now. The shadow of. A smile vanished. Strahn's eyes narrowed. Do you believe one leak ends me? Empires are not felled by truth. They are felled by fear. Keir's jaw tightened. Then I'll give them both. A hiss of feedback cut through as Strahn gestured off-screen. The walls shifted. Screens lit with Selena's face again. Thomas, Naya. Each feed sharper than before. Chains visible, fear raw. You want leverage? Strahn's tone dropped to a knife's whisper. I'll show you leverage. You think you've stolen a step. In truth, you've walked exactly where I wanted. Keir's chest heaved, but he kept his stance still. Your networks are bleeding, he said, voice flat. Your mask is off. People will know your name. Strahn leaned closer to the camera, his face filling every screen. They will know it, he agreed, but only as the storm that consumed you. You will be remembered not as the man who fought us, but as the man whose rebellion killed his own family. The words landed like blades. Keir inhaled, slow, controlled. He let the weight sink in, then pushed back. You've mistaken me, Strahn. I'm not a rebellion. His eyes burned. I'm a father who's done being owned. The screens crackled. Strahn didn't reply. Instead, he lifted a hand, gave a single command. Execute. Sirens screamed as gun ports opened along the chamber walls. Red scopes locked onto Keir's chest. He braced, every muscle coiled for the fight to come. The enemy was no longer a shadow. It had a face. It had a name, and it had just declared war. Gun ports slid open. Red sights burned across Keir's chest. Drones unfolded from the ceiling like steel vultures, barrels glowing hot. Strahn's voice filled every screen. End him. The first shot screamed. Keir moved, rolling behind a pillar. Sparks tore from the metal as bolts ripped past. He fired back, dropping one drone, but there were too many. The chamber thundered with death. Then a scream, real, human, cut through the storm. Keir! He turned. Selene broke free from the guards at the platform's edge, chains still dragging, neurocrowns sparking at her temples. She ran, stumbling, straight toward him. No, Selene, stop! The second volley ignited. A bolt of plasma streaked across the space. He dove forward, arm outstretched, but she was faster. She threw herself into him, pushing him aside. Just as the round struck, the sound was a crack of light. Her body jerked, then went limp in his arms. Time slowed. His ears rang. His heart split. Blood soaked through his hands, warm, too real. Selene's eyes fluttered, lips parting with a whisper. Always. Then her head sagged against his chest. Keir roared, a sound that shook the chamber, half grief, half rage. On the screens, Strahn watched with calm eyes. No gloating, just certainty. This is what defiance buys. Keir lowered her gently, trembling fire flooding his veins. This wasn't over, not with her life hanging by a thread, not with his children still in chains, and not while Mylik Strahn still breathed. Hallowed Verge looked dead from orbit. A black orb rimmed with ash storms, lightning crawling under the clouds like veins. Then the clouds tore, and the truth surfaced. Spires of obsidian jutting from a cratered plain, latticed bridges, antenna forests bowed toward a single citadel in the scar's center. The ground itself seemed to recoil from it. Keir Ashland watched the fortress swell in the shuttle's viewport, jaw tight, eyes steady. He had come to a lot of bad places. This one felt like the end of the map. He opened the case on his lap. The veil key lay inside, throwing quiet angles of light. Next to it, a wafer drive pulsed, compressed shards of the ledger of flesh, proof and blade, memory and weapon. He closed the case with a click. Mission 5, he said under his breath. Mine, not their demand, not their leash, his. The shuttle skimmed low, riding thermal turbulence. Static clawed the hull. Keir checked the harness lines across his chest, the spectral sheath folded flat against his spine, the skystep harness primed for violent exits. In his ear, a soft chorus, phantom motes waking one by one, like embers catching. "Map it," he whispered. They slipped through microvents in the shuttle's skin and poured into the night. A minute later, his visor drew a ghostly anatomy over the citadel. Heat plumes, power trunks, kill lanes. The outer ring bristled with auto turrets. The inner courtyard shimmered with Hushfield pockets. The tallest spire crowned a dish of interlocking arcs, crown array, built to bend crowds the way a hand bends grass. High above, 7 needle towers circled the citadel like vultures. Brigcaster pylons, Strand's voice to the stars. Keir's pulse slowed, not from calm, from decision. He thought of Selene, the last look in her eyes before the light hit, the whisper that almost wasn't a whisper. Always us. He gripped the seat until leather creaked. They had taken her voice and turned it into a knife. They had chained his children and called it leverage. They had told him who he was. He would answer them here. The shuttle bumped a thermal and dove toward a maintenance platform half swallowed by shadow. The pilot, a silence-bought smuggler with more scars than questions, didn't look back. "You've got 90 seconds, the pilot muttered. "After that, this rock eats signals. I'm gone." 90 is generous, Keir replied. His tone wasn't bravado, it was math. The ramp dropped. Heat slammed him. Air like burnt metal. He stepped into it and became smaller, edges blurring as the sheath rose. Not invisible, just unimportant. A man-shaped distortion drifting between exhaust stacks. Below, patrols moved in tight pairs, visors black, rifles asleep in relaxed hands. The calm of people who believed they were the only ones awake. Keir slid along the platform rail, dropped to a gantry, and let the motes lead. They showed him arteries masked as architecture, a coolant spine feeding the array, data conduits braided through support ribs, a finance node, tiny, almost dainty, nested in a garden of black glass. It pulsed on a cadence that matched off-world markets, money as heartbeat. Cut it, and the body staggers. Cut the voice, and the empire goes quiet. He paused in a shadow well. The motes returned a whisper of video, grains of Selene on a med slab somewhere deep, pale, breathing shallow under a battery of neurocrown monitors. Not dead, not gone, held between. He shut his eyes, let grief move through like weather, didn't fight it, didn't drown in it. When he opened them, his gaze had edges. "Hold on," he said softly. "I'm rewriting the order." A door irised open ahead. 2 guards stepped out, speaking in low code. Keir slid by, a ripple in their peripheral heartbeat leveled. Past them, a service elevator yawned. He didn't take it. Elevators arrive where someone is waiting. Stairs arrive where you choose. He descended into the citadel's bones. Pipes, wept condensate. The floor trembled with far machinery. The motes painted a path, down 1 level to the finance garden, left to the Brinkcaster trunk, up 2 to the array mixers. He repeated it once, not as a checklist, but as a promise. Cut the veins, mute the mouth, then break the crown. He reached the garden. It wasn't beautiful. It was precise. A ring of black panes rose waist-high like petals, each pane displaying a waterfall of numbers that looked random until you listened long enough to hear the pattern underneath. The money that fed Meridian Shroud flowed through here, laundered into innocence, pressed into payroll and bribes and silences. Keir set the case on the rim and cracked it open. Veil key glow washed over the glass. "Let's see what you unlock," he murmured. The motes massed like a tide, tips bright and dipped into the panes. He didn't push yet, not here, not now. He was the match poised above dry summer grass. Timing mattered if you wanted the fire to spread in the right direction. Footsteps approached. He closed the case and melted back. A clerk in grey crossed the garden reading a slate, lips moving as if reciting prayer. The shroud had taught its people that numbers were mercy, that efficiency was grace. Keir let her pass. Some battles are won by not being seen. When the garden emptied again, he exhaled a single line, more vow than plan. This ends with us walking out together. Celine, Thomas, Naya. He pictured their hands in his, not as fantasy, but as coordinates. The motes pinged, path to the Brinkcaster trunk clear. He eased away from the pains, shoulders loose, breath steady. In the distance, thunder rolled under. The ground, not weather. Systems shifting. Somewhere deep, the crown array changed pitch, a singer clearing her throat before the song. Keir glanced up the shaft toward that sound and felt something unfamiliar and welcome settle over him. Not fear, not rage, alignment. For months he'd moved because they shoved. Now he moved because he chose. He slid into the corridor, a quiet blade carried by its own purpose, and the citadel of Malik Strand did not yet know that its last story was already being written. By the man it tried to turn into an echo, the chamber pulsed with numbers, black glass petals curved upward, each pane streaming figures, roots, coded shipments, Meridian Shroud's lifeblood. Keir set the case on the rim, opened. It, the veil key, glowed, edges shifting like liquid metal. Beside it, the drive pulsed, compressed fragments of the ledger of flesh. Proof meets key, he whispered. He slotted both into the pane. The glass flared, the garden quivered, the streams froze, then bled backward. The motes poured in. Thousands. They threaded the ledgers into the shroud's accounts, inserting truth where lies lived. Every stolen child, every corpse, every transaction now mirrored into their own vaults. The system spasmed. A low groan shook the chamber. Red warnings spread. Across the panes, authenticity breach. Chain failure. Above, across the citadel, alarms rang. Different alarms. Not intruder, not fire, collapse. Keir's jaw set. Let them taste it. The motes surged to the Brinkcaster trunk, a spire of silver cables feeding upward into the towers, the shroud's voice to the stars. Mute it, Keir ordered. The veil key twisted the signal, folding channels in on themselves. One by one, the pylons flickered out. A hum that had filled the fortress since its birth went silent. No commands, no propaganda, no reach. Somewhere above, guards shouted, confused. Systems demanded orders. None came. Keir stood in the trembling garden, breath steady. He had cut the veins. He had silenced the mouth. For the first time, Meridian Shroud bled. In public, the visor fed him glimpses. Tribunal accounts freezing, foundry shipments seized mid-flight, exchange vaults locked. The Accord servers lit with confirmation. Now they see you, Keir muttered. The panes cracked, spiderwebbing with blue fire. The ledger ate itself into their roots, poisoning them with proof. The Shroud's empire, once untouchable, was unraveling from the inside out. A whisper touched the comm, strained, broken. Celine's voice, half static, dragged through stolen bandwidth. Keir, still here. Don't stop. His chest clenched, but the words steadied him. He looked at the shattered garden, the silent pylons, the flickering fortress. This was your empire, he said, voice flat, cold. Now it's evidence. He closed. The case slung it tight and turned toward the stairs leading up. The motes pulsed around him, eager. The fortress roared with confusion, systems collapsing without a master. Step by step, Keir ascended. Toward the crown array, toward Strand, and for the first time, the battlefield was his. The doors split open like jaws. Heat slammed Keir's face. A cathedral of machines rose before him, arches of steel, ribbed conduits, towers of glass. At the center, the crown array, a sphere of crystalline plates rotated, each plate humming with psychic resonance. Voices bled through it. not real voices, echoes, obedience carved into vibration, and standing at the base, calm as a man in his study, was Mylik Strawn. He wore no armor, only a long coat woven with filaments that pulsed faintly as if the fortress itself fed him. His eyes, black as obsidian glass, fixed on Keir. "So," Strawn said, his voice was almost gentle, "the pawn makes it to the board's far end." Keir raised his rifle, breath steady. "Not pawn, not anymore." Strawn's lips curved faintly. "You think cutting my networks matters? Finance grows back, signals reroute, fear is renewable." Keir stepped closer, boots ringing on the platform. "Truth isn't. You buried it under numbers, chains, and sermons. I dug it back up. And now," he gestured to the array, "I'm going to let everyone see what you are." Strawn's eyes narrowed. "You can't wield this." He swept a hand to the array, light sparking off his coat. "It bends nations. It bends will. Men break under its chorus." Keir's grip tightened. "Then maybe it finally sings for the right side." Strawn moved, fast for a man his age. His coat split, a hidden weapon snapping from his sleeve. A blade of pure light hissed into shape. Keir fired. Bolts cracked the air. Strawn deflected, sparks spraying as the blade slashed them. Aside. The array boomed with the force. They closed, steel rang, light seared. Keir's rifle split under the blade. He dropped it, pulled his sidearm, fired point blank. Strawn twisted, the shot grazing his shoulder. "You fight well," Strawn murmured, "but wars aren't won by skill. They're won by narrative." Keir shoved forward, teeth gritted. "Then hear mine." He slammed Strawn back against the array's console. The phantom motes swarmed, latching onto ports, hijacking streams, screens across the chamber lit, files flashing in brutal sequence, tribunal manipulation, foundry shipments, exchange ledgers, choir triggers. Truth, unfiltered, Strawn roared, smashing a console with his blade. Sparks showered, the feeds staggered but held. "You think exposing me changes anything?" He barked. "They crave the song, they fear silence. They will follow the next hand that conducts." Keir's voice was low, dangerous. "Then let them follow their own eyes." He jammed the veil key into the array's core. The hum spiked. Light cascaded outward. For an instant, Keir felt every voice, every echo, pressing at the edge of his mind. It almost drowned him. Almost. He forced his breath steady. Celine's whisper. Tomas's laugh, Naya's tiny hand. Anchors. He pushed them through the current. The array tilted, the song fractured, and then the feeds went live, not propaganda, not obedience, evidence. Broadcast across every channel the Shroud once controlled, worlds watching, colonies hearing, soldiers in barracks staring as their faith shattered. On screen, a foundry clerk's report scrolled, child labor for plasma, rigs, tribunal memos about rigged votes, exchange ledgers with prices beside species codes, faces of the stolen, their cries, their silence. Keir's voice thundered into the stream. "This is Meridian Shroud. This is what they built on your backs. This is who Mylik Strawn is." Strawn surged back, blade raised high. Fury cracked his composure. "You dare use my array against me?" Keir caught the blade on a broken rifle. Stock, sparks searing his arm. He shoved, snarling, "Not yours anymore!" The array boomed again, resonance flooding the chamber, shaking the walls. Strawn staggered, his coat flickering as the Citadel systems betrayed him. His empire was eating itself, truth corroding the song, but Strawn's eyes still burned. "I don't need a network to kill you," he spat. Keir's bloodied hands closed around the veil key, twisting it deeper into the array. The hum reached a scream. Lights burst, sending columns of radiance stabbing into the sky. "The galaxy sees you now," Keir said, voice raw, shaking. "They see all of it. And there's no choir loud enough to drown the truth." Strawn lunged. Keir braced. The chamber convulsed, systems dying, streams spreading, and above them for the first time the crown array sang not of obedience, but of revelation. The fortress shook itself apart. Smoke bled from walls, consoles sparked. Somewhere above, the array still screamed with dying light. Keir pushed through rubble, chest heaving, until he found her. Selene lay on a med slab, pale, lips blue, blood staining her chest wrap. The neuro-crown still clamped her temples, wires twitching like dying serpents. He ripped it free. Sparks snapped against his hands. He didn't care. "Stay with me," he whispered, voice breaking. "Selene, don't you let go." Her breath fluttered, shallow, too shallow. The phantom mote swarmed the medrig, projecting schematics. The answer glowed in his visor, experimental starseed mesh, half human, half Veri biotech. A lattice of living light, weaving new tissue cell by cell, unstable, risk stacked to failure. But the only option left. He tore open the case, hands shaking, the mesh unfolded, strands shimmering like silver vines. Anchor to heartline, the motes whispered in coded text. He pressed the mesh onto her wound. It sank, alive, tendrils lacing into torn muscle. Light pulsed. Selene arched, gasping, a cry caught between pain and breath. "Easy, love," Keir said, voice low, steady. "It's me. I've got you." The mesh flared brighter, knitting vessels, rebuilding what the bolt had destroyed. Monitors spiked, then steadied. Her eyes fluttered open, weak, but there. Keir. Relief hit him so hard he nearly collapsed. He gripped her hand, forehead pressing to hers. "Yeah, I'm here. I'm not leaving again." Tears cut lines. Down his face, mixing with soot. Around them the fortress groaned like a beast in its death throes, but in that moment all he saw was her chest rising steady. Alive. The citadel burned behind them. Towers falling, brinkcaster pylons crumbling into ash. The empire of Meridian Shroud fractured, screaming as it died. Keir held Selene against him, her steps weak but steady. Thomas and Naya clung to his sides, faces streaked with soot and tears. They reached the ridge. Cold wind swept the plain. For the first time in months, there was no voice in his ear. No leash, only silence. He knelt, pulling the children close, his voice rough. "I'm sorry for all of it. I can't give you perfect. I can only give you us, chosen, together." Selene's hand found his, weak but warm. She whispered, "That's enough." They sat in the wind, a broken family but breathing as one. Then his visor pinged. "Unknown channel, one phrase only. What you cut was a branch. The root remains." Keir's eyes narrowed. He looked at his family, at the sky torn by fire. The war wasn't over. But tonight, they had each other. And that was where the fight would begin again, and that was where the fight would begin again. A family scarred but unbroken. A man who had been forced into shadows, now choosing his own light. The galaxy would remember this night. And so would he. If this story moved you, if you want to stand with Keir and his family against the darkness, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps keep these journeys alive, and together we'll keep uncovering the next chapter, waiting beyond the stars.